What if the biggest lie ever told about Africa wasn't about war or poverty, but about potential? What if the continent called poor by the West was actually the richest, only untapped? And what if the so-called solution to Africa's food crisis wasn't charity from abroad, but courage from within? Every year, Africa imports over $40 billion worth of food. That's $40 billion not going to African farmers, African traders, or African families. At the same time, the continent possesses nearly 60% of the world's remaining uncultivated arable land. It is a paradox so absurd it almost sounds like satire. A continent that could feed itself and much of the world is instead starving, importing basic food items, and relying on outside help to survive. But Burkina Faso, a landlocked country in the heart of West Africa, decided to break this vicious cycle. Not with press conferences, not with foreign aid dependency, and definitely not with the usual empty slogans from international institutions. Under the bold leadership of its young revolutionary president Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso made a choice that could change the course of African history: to plant its future in its own soil. Rather than endlessly asking why Africa isn't feeding itself, Burkina Faso has begun answering that question with action. President Traoré didn't go to Paris or Washington for handouts. Instead, he went to the people, to the youth, and more importantly, to the land. At the heart of this transformation is a groundbreaking national program, the Presidential Initiative for Agricultural Production and Food Self-Sufficiency, better known by its French acronym, IP3A. With a staggering investment of $200 million, the initiative is training 8,000 young Burkinabé, 2,000 in its first wave, to become agricultural entrepreneurs. Not just farmers, entrepreneurs, business leaders, visionaries of the soil. The context from which this initiative emerged is important to understand. Burkina Faso has suffered through years of violent conflict, terrorist attacks, internal displacement, and food insecurity. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, over 2 million people have been forced from their homes due to insecurity, and nearly 1 in 4 Burkinabé face acute food insecurity. This isn't a slow-burning crisis, it's an emergency. And yet, paradoxically, more than 9 million hectares of arable land lie unused across the country. Much of the farming population is aging. Infrastructure is weak. Technology is outdated. And the youth, understandably, have been fleeing rural life for the perceived opportunities of cities. Or worse, risking their lives in perilous journeys across deserts and seas seeking a better future elsewhere. President Traoré looked at this crisis not with despair, but determination. Where others saw a broken system, he saw a broken promise, one that could be repaired by those with the most at stake, the youth. In March 2025, the IP3A was officially launched. 2,000 young men and women, selected from all 13 regions of Burkina Faso, arrived at several newly established training centers, including the prestigious National School of Agriculture in Maturku. They were not just students, they were pioneers of a new national mission. For 3 intensive months, they immersed themselves in both traditional farming methods and modern scientific practices. These weren't boring lectures in dusty classrooms. This was hands-on, gritty, real-world training. They learned to manage irrigation systems, make organic fertilizers, raise livestock, and engage in beekeeping, poultry farming, fish farming, and composting. But perhaps most importantly, they were taught how to think like entrepreneurs. They were trained in digital marketing, agro-supply chains, cooperative management, and value-added processing. In short, they were taught how to build businesses from the land. This program wasn't just about feeding people, it was about empowering them. President Traoré made it clear, This wasn't charity, it was sovereignty. Food sovereignty, economic sovereignty, and most importantly, dignity. Once their training ends, each participant receives a 12.5-hectare plot of land. Not a ceremonial plot. A working farm, backed by government support, equipped with starter kits, seeds, organic fertilizers, basic tools, access to machinery, and not left alone. Each new farmer is connected to a network of advisors, mentors, extension services, and agricultural cooperatives. The message is simple and powerful. You are not a laborer. You are a leader. You're not growing food just to eat. You're rebuilding a nation. Expectations are high. Each participant is treated as a business operator with productivity targets and responsibilities to local markets. They are expected not only to grow crops, but to create jobs, reduce food imports, and stimulate local economies. Their success isn't measured just in harvests, but in transformation. Social, economic, generational. Already, we are seeing results. At the training centers, demonstration farms are outperforming traditional rural plots thanks to techniques like composting, drip irrigation, and intercropping. Some trainees have started making their own organic fertilizers from animal waste and crop residues. The impact? Healthier soils, lower costs, and better yields. And it's catching on. Farmers outside the program are now requesting access to these locally made biofertilizers. But something even more powerful is happening, something you can't measure with data. Mindsets are changing. For decades, farming was seen as a job of last resort, something you did if you had no education, no money, and no future. But today, in villages across Burkina Faso, parents are starting to tell their children, stay, learn, grow here. Why? Because they're seeing youth use smartphones to sell produce, manage farm logistics, and access microloans. They're witnessing dignity return to rural life. They're watching as the land becomes a source of pride, not shame. One trainee said it best, "We're not just farming crops, we're farming hope. And in a country where hope has been scarce for far too long, that's revolutionary." But let's be honest, the road ahead is still rough. Burkina Faso faces real threats: armed insurgency, climate volatility, economic instability. The success of this initiative will depend not only on training, but on security, infrastructure, and sustained investment. Yet the government isn't naive. They've put in place localized support systems, village supervisors, mobile agronomy teams, supply chain logistics, to ensure that no trainee is left behind, even in remote or conflict-affected zones. The early numbers are promising. A March 2025 report from the Ministry of Agriculture showed a 17% increase in maize yields at demonstration farms, and a notable drop in fertilizer costs due to composting. These may seem like small wins, but in a country with millions at risk of hunger, they're life-changing. The government isn't stopping. Plans are already underway to scale from 2,000 to 8,000 trainees by the end of 2025. More training centers are being built. Agro-innovation hubs are being developed in the north and east. These hubs will serve not only as schools, but as R&D laboratories, testing and sharing techniques across regions. And there's more. The Ministry of Digital Transition is partnering with agriculture officials to launch mobile tools, apps that deliver weather alerts, market prices, pest warnings, and agri-advice in real time. A national digital platform called Agata is also being developed to monitor production, reduce losses, and improve food distribution. One of the most exciting developments is the plan to build out value chains, connecting these young farmers to processors, storage facilities, and even export opportunities. Currently, post-harvest losses for staple crops can reach 30%. That's food rotting due to poor logistics. By investing in cold storage, drying facilities, and regional trade networks, Burkina Faso can not only feed itself, but become a food exporter. This is about more than just feeding people. It's about transforming agriculture into a respected, innovative, and profitable career path. It's about building a generation of farmers who are not victims of circumstance, but creators of their own destiny. And the implications are continental. Imagine if Nigeria, Ghana, Mali, or the DRC adopted similar youth-centered models. Africa, with over 420 million people aged 15 to 35, cannot afford to ignore this blueprint. It's scalable. It's homegrown. It works. Burkina Faso may not have the biggest economy or the most powerful army, but under President Ibrahim Traoré, it's proving something far more powerful: the will to believe in its own people, to invest not in dependency, but in dignity, to trust its youth with the tools to build, not beg for, a better future. As the world grapples with food shortages, climate disruption, and geopolitical fragmentation, Burkina Faso is reminding us of something essential. The most strategic resource isn't oil or gold, it's people. And when you train them, trust them, and give them land, they don't just survive, they thrive. So, to the world watching, don't ignore this quiet revolution. In the farms of Burkina Faso, a new Africa is being born, not dependent, but determined. Not waiting for saviors, but growing its own salvation. If you've been inspired by this story, share this video. Let the world know what's happening in Burkina Faso. Drop a comment to support these young agri-entrepreneurs. And subscribe to Chronicle Traoré FO